Tonight, before the world asks anything more of you, let the room grow quiet and imagine a door opening somewhere behind the present. Not a grand door, not the door of a palace or a battlefield or a famous house with a famous name. Just an ordinary bedroom door in the late 19th century with a brass handle cooled by morning air, a strip of grey light beneath it, and the faint sound of someone moving carefully on the other side. Beyond that door is a day that looks gentle from a distance. There will be tea, there will be linen, there will be ribbons, letters, polished spoons, calling cards, pale curtains, and a fire that never seems quite warm enough. There will be a woman in a long dress walking slowly from one room to another, doing nothing that history books usually call important. And yet, if you stay with her, softly and without rushing, you begin to notice how much is hidden inside an ordinary day. A corset is not only clothing, it is a lesson in posture, patience, and being seen correctly. A breakfast table is not only food, it is a quiet courtroom of manners, appetite, family rank, and things no one says aloud. A calling card is not only paper, it is proof that you remembered the invisible rules. A letter is not only ink, it is affection measured carefully enough to survive being read by someone else. This is the small, secret machinery of Victorian womanhood, not the dramatic version with thunder at the window and scandal in the hallway. Tonight, we are following the slower version, the one made of cold floors. Brushed hair, careful smiles, household keys, folded napkins, half-finished embroidery, and the private thought a woman keeps to herself while everyone believes she is simply being polite. You do not need to memorize any of it. You do not need to keep track of every name or every custom. Let the details pass like candlelight along a wall. Let the words become as soft as fabric being lifted from a chair. This is history. But it is also a place to rest. So settle in. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw loosen. Let the day you have just lived move farther away, while another day, much older and quieter, begins to take its place. If this gentle walk through the past keeps you company tonight, you may leave a small sign of it when you wake, a like, a note, the time where you drifted off, or the place from which you were listening. But for now, there is nothing you need to do. The house is still dim, the curtains are drawn, the ashes in the grate are faintly red. Somewhere downstairs, water is being heated, coal is being carried, and the long work of respectability has already begun. And you, somehow, have opened your eyes in the year 1878. At first, you are not sure what has woken you. It is not an alarm. It is not a phone. It is not the bright, sudden insistence of the modern world. It is a slower sound, a layered sound, the kind a house makes when many people are awake before you are allowed to be. Below the bedroom floor, iron pokers knock faintly against grates. A bucket is set down on stone. A door opens, then closes with that careful click used by servants who know silence is part of their employment. Farther away, out beyond the window, wheels move through a wet street, carrying coal, milk, bread, and the first gray news of the day. Your room is dim, the curtains are thick, and the morning has not yet conquered them. The air has a cold, still quality, as if the whole bedroom has been waiting all night for permission to breathe. The fire in the grate is almost gone, reduced to a reddish memory beneath ash. Every object appears patient and faintly severe. The washstand, the wardrobe, the small chair, the bell pull, the framed print on the wall, and the tall mirror that will later tell you whether society may safely tolerate your appearance. For now, you remain under the blankets. The bed is deep and high, surrounded by curtains that create a little room within the room. There is a sense of protection in it, but also a sense of being stored. You are not so much sleeping as being kept for use until the household requires you. The sheets are cool near the edge, warmer where your body has hidden through the night. A hot water bottle wrapped in flannel lies near your feet. No longer hot, exactly, but loyal enough to be thanked. The first task of the day is simply becoming vertical. This sounds easy in a century with central heating, soft slippers, and forgiving clothing. It is not easy here. Here, the floor has opinions. The air has intentions. The room seems to believe that leaving bed should involve character formation. You lie still for a few more breaths, looking toward the window, and think of the many duties already forming in the distance, like a row of small gray clouds. There will be breakfast, there will be dressing, there will be letters to answer, calls to return, household matters to inspect, relatives to soothe, appearances to maintain, and an endless number of tiny judgments floating invisibly through the day. No one will announce most of them. That is the genius of the system. You are simply expected to know. A soft knock comes at the door. Not loud. Nothing is loud yet. The morning is still in its formal introduction. The maid enters with practiced care, carrying the small tray that makes the transition from sleep to duty seem almost civilized. There is tea, pale and steaming. There is dry toast, cut neatly enough to suggest discipline. There may be a folded note, a message from your mother, or a reminder about a call that must be returned before the end of the week. The maid sets the tray down. She moves toward the curtains and draws them open just enough to let in a quiet spill of winter-colored light. Outside, the sky is not blue, so much as undecided. The glass is faintly misted. Chimney smoke leans across the rooftops. Somewhere in the street below, a horse shakes its harness, and the sound of metal rings through the morning like a small bell. You sit up carefully. Even this has rules. Hair must not fall too wildly. The nightdress must not slip from the shoulder. One must not appear tangled. Even after sleep, Victorian respectability begins before the feet touch the floor. The tea warms your hands. The cup is thin enough to feel delicate, yet sturdy enough to outlast whole generations of nervous daughters. You drink slowly. The first taste is not especially delicious, but it is familiar, and familiarity is half the comfort of this world. Tea is less a beverage than a bridge. It carries you from the private country of sleep into the public country of being watched. You hear the maid moving behind you, setting out water, arranging linen, lifting garments from the wardrobe with the seriousness of someone preparing a ceremony. And in a way, that is what it is. The day cannot begin until the body has been made acceptable to it. For one more moment, though, you are only half here. The blankets are still warm, the room is still quiet, you are still hidden from the household, from visitors, from the neat little laws of class and gender and good breeding. You can breathe fully. You can blink without meaning anything by it. You can look out at the pale sky and belong to no one but yourself. Then the maid turns and asks gently whether you are ready. And because a Victorian day does not negotiate for long, you say yes. The first cold touch of the floor travels up through your feet like a message from the century itself. It says, very plainly, that comfort is not the purpose of the morning. You stand beside the bed in your nightdress, thinly armored against the air, and feel the entire room observing you. The washstand waits with its basin and pitcher. The wardrobe waits with its many layers. The mirror waits with its tall, patient honesty. On a chair near the fire, the clothes of the day have been arranged in sequence, not as garments but as a lesson in hierarchy. Closest to the body, linen, over that, structure, over that, modesty, over that, fashion, over all of it, expectation. The morning wash comes first. This is not the luxurious sinking bath one might imagine in a painted advertisement. It is a practical negotiation with water that was warmer a little while ago. You splash your face, your neck, your hands, and any other portion of yourself that etiquette, climate, and courage allow. The water wakes you more effectively than kindness. It leaves your skin bright, your breath sharp, and your thoughts suddenly much more present than you had wished. There is soap, faintly scented if the household is fortunate, plain and harsh if it is not. There is a towel with the texture of moral instruction. You dry yourself carefully, aware that cleanliness in this world is both a real concern and a performance. One must be fresh, but not indulgent. One must be delicate, but not idle. One must seem naturally composed after a process that involves cold water, stiff linen, and quiet suffering. Then comes the chemise, soft and white, the last garment of the morning that feels like a friend. It falls lightly against the skin, and for a moment you might believe the worst is over. It is not. The corset waits. It is not a monster in the way later imagination sometimes makes it. It is not always torture, not always extreme, not always the dramatic villain of the wardrobe, but it is also not neutral. It is a daily reminder that the body is expected to explain itself in a fashionable shape. It is cotton and busk, and boning and laces, and it carries with it the quiet belief that a proper woman should be held together visibly. Your maid brings it around you and fastens the front. The fabric is cool at first, then she moves behind you and begins to tighten the laces, not cruelly, not theatrically, but with the steady confidence of long practice. You take a careful breath, then another, smaller one. Your posture rises because it must. Your shoulders settle back. Your waist becomes less an area of the body than a public statement. There is a strange relief in the structure too that is part of its power. Once the corset is in place, you know where the day begins and where you are expected to end. It holds you. It limits you. It supports you. It reminds you. Victorian clothing is rarely only clothing. It is architecture with opinions. Over the corset come petticoats, one, then another, depending on the season, the occasion, and the household sense of what warmth and propriety require. The fabric whispers as it falls. It gathers weight around you, not heavy at first, then, gradually, significant. You become wider, softer in outline, more difficult to move quickly. The body slows because the clothing asks it to, if the fashion of the moment requires it. There may be a crinoline or bustle, an engineered shape meant to create the silhouette admired in magazines and drawing rooms. The structure changes how you understand space. A doorway becomes a small calculation. A chair becomes a decision. Turning too quickly becomes a risk to furniture. Dignity, and possibly a vase that has survived longer than most family opinions. Then the dress itself. Day dresses are not made for escape. They fasten at angles the human arm cannot easily reach. They use buttons so small they seem designed by a committee of watchmakers and enemies. The fabric may be wool, cotton, silk, or a blend chosen for season, status, and the chance of being noticed by someone whose notice matters. The sleeves fit, the bodice aligns, the skirt settles, the maid smooths a wrinkle that no one else would see, but everyone else might somehow feel. Stockings, boots, laces, gloves later, perhaps a collar, a brooch, a ribbon, a narrow chain, a handkerchief tucked where it can be found gracefully. Each piece adds another layer between your private self and the world. Each piece says, I have been prepared. I belong to a household that knows the rules. I am not careless. Hair is another morning country entirely. Pins appear from small boxes. Brushes pass through long strands with rhythmic patience. Hair is parted, coiled, braided, lifted, pinned, and subdued. Loose hair belongs to childhood, illness, intimacy, or dramatic paintings. A woman going downstairs must not look as if she has recently met a strong wind or an original thought. The maid steps back, you turn toward the mirror. A woman looks back at you from inside the glass. She is upright, contained, pale from the morning cold, composed by other people's hands. She looks ready for breakfast. She looks ready for visitors. She looks ready for the 1,000 small tests of the day. Only you know that a few minutes ago she was warm under blankets, reluctant to move, and wonderfully unarranged. You take one more quiet breath as full as the corset permits. Then you leave the bedroom and begin your descent into the house. The staircase is a stage in installments. Each step carries you farther from privacy and deeper into the organized theater of the household. The runner beneath your boots softens the sound, but not completely. A Victorian house listens to movement. Servants hear it. Relatives interpret it. A late arrival at breakfast can become evidence. A hurried step can suggest nerves. Even the speed with which you come downstairs may be entered silently into the ledger of family meaning. The breakfast room glows with a calmer light than the bedroom. The fire here has been encouraged into usefulness. Silver catches the morning at sharp little angles. Porcelain waits in ranks. The table is already laid, and everything about it seems to imply that civilization depends on how a person handles toast. You enter with a gentle greeting, not too bright, not too weary. The morning voice must be placed somewhere between health and humility. Your father, or perhaps your husband, is behind a newspaper, which gives him the appearance of a nation receiving intelligence. Your mother or older female relative has already noticed the set of your hair, the timing of your entrance, and whether your expression suggests gratitude for another day of respectable existence. You sit where you are meant to sit. That is important. Victorian rooms often decide things before anyone speaks. The head of the table belongs to authority. The foot belongs to another kind of authority. The young, unmarried, dependent, or merely tactful occupy the spaces between. Breakfast may be simple or abundant depending on class, region, and income, but even abundance has a certain caution in the morning. There is tea, of course. There is toast in a rack that keeps it upright and often aggressively dry. There may be porridge, eggs, ham, fish, rolls, marmalade, or cold meat from the previous day. There is always the possibility that something on the table will require the correct utensil, and therefore the correct nerve. The first few minutes are peaceful, or as peaceful as a room can be when everyone is performing normality. Spoons touch cups, a chair shifts, the newspaper crackles. A servant enters and leaves with quiet precision. Outside, the day brightens without becoming cheerful. Conversation begins safely, because safe conversation is one of the load-bearing walls of Victorian life. The weather may be discussed at almost any hour, provided no one becomes passionate about it. Gardens are useful. A neighbor's health may be mentioned if done delicately. News from town may be touched with gloved fingers. Anything involving money, politics, bodily discomfort, romantic disappointment, or genuine feeling must be approached as one approaches thin ice. You are asked whether you slept well. The question sounds simple. It is not. To say yes too quickly suggests you are insensitive to the damp, the cold, or the household's troubles. To say no invites concern, speculation, and possibly a tonic. So you say that you slept tolerably, thank you, and that the wind seemed to drop after midnight. This answer is acceptable. It contains weather, restraint, and no alarming information. A letter may be mentioned. A call may need returning. Someone may remind you that the vicar's wife is expected later in the week. Your mother may observe, with the softest possible edge, that blue suits you when you are not tired. You understand this to mean that you look tired. The food itself is less important than the manner of receiving it. You butter toast in controlled strokes. You lift the cup without clatter. You do not lean. You do not reach. You do not display hunger as though raised by wolves or novelists. Even appetite must wear gloves, and yet there is comfort here too. The fire gives a steady heat to your ankles. Tea enters the body like permission. The room smells of bread, coal smoke, polished wood, and the faint sweetness of preserves. The household, for all its watchfulness, is gathered. The day has not yet broken into errands and calls. For a few minutes, everyone belongs to the same table. This is one of the truths of domestic history. Constraint and comfort often sit very close together. The same breakfast that tests your manners also warms your hands. The same family that measures you also shelters you. The same room that makes you careful also keeps the rain outside. After the last cup is poured and the plates begin to disappear, the room loosens. Newspapers fold, chairs move back. Someone says that the morning must be got on with, as if the morning were a horse requiring a bridle. You rise, smoothed and fed, but not exactly rested. The day is opening now. It has finished its polite introduction. Beyond the breakfast room, wait the smaller rituals. Hair checked again, gloves selected, household questions answered, notes written, visits planned, and somewhere, under all of it, quiet as steam fading from a cup, is the small wish to return to the warmth upstairs. But the house is awake now, and because you are part of the house, you must be awake with it. After breakfast, the body must be made presentable in a second, more public way. Morning dressing has created the structure. Now the details must be polished into acceptability. A Victorian woman is not simply dressed once and released into the day. She is maintained, adjusted, inspected, scented, brushed, pinned, and occasionally rescued from the consequences of fabric. You return to the bedroom or a dressing room, where the light has improved enough to become honest. The mirror now reveals what candlelight kindly ignored. A loose strand near the ear, a crease at the shoulder, a ribbon not sitting as it should. These are small things, but small things are where reputation likes to hide. The maid attends to your hair again. The brush moves slowly from crown to ends. Not the hurried modern drag of a person late for work, but a long repetitive motion with almost religious patience. Hair care is one of the great quiet labors of the century. Washing the hair is not a daily matter. It demands water heated and carried, time protected, towels prepared, and a willingness to spend half the day drying what fashion requires to be abundant. So most mornings rely on brushing, powdering, smoothing, and the hope that lavender can persuade the world to be generous. A little scent may be used. Not too much. Perfume must suggest a garden remembered, not announce a flower shop under attack. Lavender water, rose, violet, or orange blossom touches the wrist, the handkerchief, perhaps the hair. These scents mingle with starch, wool, coal smoke, soap, and the living warmth trapped beneath layers of clothing. It is easy from a later century to laugh at Victorian hygiene, but the truth is more textured than a joke. People washed, they worried about cleanliness, they read advice manuals and bought soaps and powders and brushes and tooth preparations. But they did so in houses without the effortless plumbing many people now take for granted, in clothes that resisted easy laundering, in cities where coal smoke settled on skin and linen, and in a culture where looking clean could matter as much as being clean. Teeth require attention. Tooth powder may taste of chalk, charcoal, salt, or something advertised with great confidence and little mercy. The brush is not gentle. Your mouth feels scoured afterward, as if virtue itself has been rubbed across the gums. You rinse, dab, and hope the dentist remains a distant figure in your life. Then the face, a little powder, perhaps, a careful treatment of shine, a check for redness, shadows, anything too human. Victorian beauty often asks for a contradiction. You must look healthy but not robust, delicate but not ill, natural but not neglected, modest but not plain. The ideal woman appears as though she has arranged herself effortlessly, after spending a considerable amount of effort arranging herself. The hands matter. Gloves will cover them later, but nails are still cleaned, skin softened if possible, fingers kept presentable for letters. Sewing, tea, music, and all the small gestures by which a woman is read. Hands can betray labor or leisure. They can suggest class, diligence, nerves, or carelessness. Even a handkerchief can become evidence, and then for a moment you are still again. The maid steps away. The room holds the smell of soap. powder, linen, and the ghost of the extinguished fire. Outside, the city or village has fully entered its morning business. You hear a cart, a cry from the street, a door closing below. Your own day has not yet become crowded, but it is beginning to gather its materials. There is a calm to this pause if you let it be calm. The body has been washed as much as the morning allows. The hair has been settled, the dress is corrected, the face in the mirror has become the face other people expect to meet. You place a hand lightly on the dressing table. Its polished surface is cool. There are small objects arranged there. A brush with worn silver, a pin tray, a ribbon, a bottle, a folded note, perhaps a miniature portrait of someone loved or merely unavoidable. History lives in these objects, not only in laws and battles and public speeches, but in the brush lifted every morning, the basin emptied, the glove buttoned, the ribbon retied until it looks accidental. You are ready now for the first outward obligations of the day. A woman may be comfortable in her own room, she may be nearly herself there, but soon the front door, the carriage step, the calling card tray, and the drawing rooms of other women will ask her to become legible to society. And society, as you are about to remember, has a very long memory and a very small card. The calling card is a little rectangle of paper, and like many little things in Victorian life, it carries more power than seems reasonable. It lies on a tray near the entrance hall, creamy and stiff, printed with a name in elegant letters. Your own cards are kept ready, because visits are the bloodstream of respectable society. People do not simply know one another. They call, return calls, leave cards, receive cards, arrange visits, delay visits, forgive delays, remember delays, and quietly judge the spacing between one card and the next. After breakfast, you consult the visiting book. It may be leather-bound, neat, and full of names that appear harmless, until one realizes each name contains a duty. Lady Harrington called Tuesday. Mrs. Vale left a card Thursday. Your cousin's friend has arrived in town and must be acknowledged. A newly married neighbor expects to be recognized. Someone's aunt is ill. Someone's sister is engaged. Someone's husband has been promoted. And each fact has its own social temperature. The genius of the calling system is that it makes intimacy feel administrative. You choose the order of visits carefully. Too eager, and you seem dependent. Too delayed, and you seem proud. Too selective, and people wonder why. Too universal, and you spend your life moving from one chair to another in rooms that smell faintly of tea, coal, and stored resentment. Your visiting dress is examined, gloves are chosen, a bonnet is secured, framing the face in a way meant to suggest both taste and obedience to weather. A parasol may come too, not only against sun, but as a portable boundary. There is comfort in having something to hold. A parasol gives the hands employment, and the eyes a reason to lower. If there is a carriage, you enter it with practiced caution, arranging skirts so they do not rebel. If not, you walk, accompanied if propriety demands it, which it usually does. The outside air is cooler than the breakfast room. It carries damp stone, horse, smoke, and bakery warmth from somewhere down the street. The world is busy in ways polite women are not supposed to look at too directly. Boys run errands, shopkeepers open shutters, a maid beats a rug in an area below the pavement. Men pass with purposeful hats. Your first call may last only a few minutes. That is part of the strangeness. You might travel across town to not see someone and consider the mission successful. A servant opens the door. Your card is presented. If the lady of the house is not at home, whether truly absent or strategically unreachable, your card remains as proof of good faith. You leave relieved, but your face must not show it. If she is at home, you are shown into the drawing room. This is where the real work begins. A drawing room can appear soft. It has curtains, chairs, framed pictures, a piano, perhaps ferns, perhaps a bowl of flowers arranged with the seriousness of a diplomatic treaty. But beneath its softness runs a current of appraisal. Where you sit, how long you stay, whether you accept tea, how you mention mutual acquaintances, whether your bonnet is admired or silently absorbed into future gossip, all of it matters. The visit should be brief, light, and apparently effortless. 15 minutes can be both nothing and eternity. You speak of the weather, the roads, the health of family members whose health is safe to mention, the mild excellence of the season's flowers, and the difficulty of finding good household help without sounding as though you have noticed class conflict at close range. You do not speak of loneliness. You do not say that the corset pinches. You do not admit that you would rather be reading. You do not ask what your hostess thinks of her own life unless you are prepared for the collapse of civilization. And yet, within the rules, there are tiny freedoms. A raised eyebrow can carry sympathy. A shared glance over a dry cake can become friendship. A pause after a name can say what a paragraph must not. Women become experts at this hidden language because the public language is so heavily fenced. After the call, you leave another impression behind you, invisible but real. You climb back into the carriage or step again into the street. Another house waits, another card, another door, another small performance of belonging. By the time you return home, your own hall may hold new cards from visitors who arrived while you were away. The cycle continues with the calm relentlessness of laundry. It can seem absurd, this paper web of politeness, but it is also the social technology of the age. Before instant messages, before casual phone calls, before a simple blue dot could reveal who had read what, there were cards, trays, ledgers, servants, and the human memory for slight. You stand in the hall and look at the new stack of names. Some are welcome, some are tiring, some carry obligation like dust on the hem. You place your gloves aside and feel for a moment the relief of being back inside your own walls. The house receives you with its familiar smells and sounds. Somewhere, a clock is marking time with steady little clicks. Somewhere in the kitchen, lunch is being argued into existence. The morning social expedition is over, but the day has many rooms left. For now, you return to the softer work expected of quiet hands. Near a window, where the light is best, the embroidery waits. It rests in a hoop, half-finished, patient, and mildly accusing. A border of leaves has been started. A flower leans in one corner. There may be initials, a verse, a pattern copied from a magazine, or a design chosen because it is respectable enough to display and complicated enough to prove virtue. In a Victorian home, needlework is rarely only needlework. It is discipline made decorative. You sit where the light falls across your lap. The chair is not designed for slouching. Very little in your world is designed for slouching. The hoop settles against your skirt. The thread runs through your fingers, and the needle flashes small and silver before disappearing into the cloth. The first stitches calm you. That is part of the reason needlework endures. The hand moves, the eye follows, the mind is given something narrow and repetitive to hold. In the quiet, one stitch becomes another, and the morning's calls begin to lose their sharpness. A conversation that bothered you softens into thread. A glance you could not interpret becomes a leaf. The body's restlessness is persuaded into order. Around you, other women may be sewing too. A mother, an aunt, a sister, a cousin. The room contains the low music of fabric shifting, thread drawn through linen, scissors set down, pages turning if someone reads aloud. No one is idle. Idleness is dangerous in a culture that believes a woman's virtue should be visible, even in her fingertips. Sometimes the work is useful. Shirts must be mended, linens marked, stockings darned, household cloth maintained. Sometimes it is ornamental, destined for a cushion, a screen, a handkerchief, a wedding chest, a charity bazaar, or a piece of furniture no one particularly likes, but everyone must praise. The difference between practical and decorative labor is not always clear because both serve the household's image. Needlework also creates a socially approved kind of absence. While you stitch, you are present, but not fully available. You may listen without being accused of listening. You may think without looking as though you are thinking. You may avoid a question by counting stitches. You may lower your eyes at precisely the moment someone mentions a marriage prospect. This is one of the secret shelters of the day. Your aunt comments on the evenness of the border. You thank her. Your mother says the color is becoming. You agree. A cousin asks whether the pattern is new. You explain that it came from a ladies' magazine, though you leave out the part where you chose it because the alternative involved 6 birds and a moral motto. The afternoon advances in small increments. The light shifts across the carpet. The fire settles and is stirred. Tea may arrive. A servant passes. Somewhere outside, the street makes its own industrious noise, but here inside the room, time has been trained into loops. One stitch, another, a knot loosened, a thread smoothed, a mistake unpicked quietly before anyone notices. There is frustration. Of course, the needle pricks your finger, the silk tangles, the pattern blurs, your eyes tire. You wonder how many hours of women's lives have disappeared into simplest antimacassars, collars, cuffs, cushions, christening gowns and linens, stored away for futures they did not choose. You wonder briefly whether patience is a virtue or simply what people praise when they benefit from your stillness. Then the room grows quiet again, and the thought passes like a cloud over the sun. You return to the fabric. History often remembers the loud work. Factories, parliaments, wars, inventions, railways, ships. But it is full of this kind of work too, the silent maintenance of appearances. The hours spent making homes look effortless. The practiced hands that turned boredom, anxiety, and obedience into something with a border and a hem. And there is tenderness in it as well. A small garment sewn for a child, a handkerchief marked for someone leaving home, a tablecloth prepared for a holiday meal. Not every stitch is a prison. Some are care, some are memory, some are a woman's way of leaving a trace in a world that often asked her to vanish politely. You pull the thread through and watch the small flower become a little more complete. The day too is being stitched together, morning to noon, duty to duty, room to room. The pattern may not be entirely yours, but for this one quiet hour, the needle is in your hand. And soon, when the light changes again, you may be allowed a more private escape, one made not of thread, but of paper, ink, and dangerous imagination. A book can lie on a table looking innocent. That is one of its talents. It may have a plain cover, a moral title, a ribbon marker placed in a respectable chapter. It may be a volume of sermons, essays, household advice, poetry approved by people who prefer feelings when safely dead. But beneath a visible book, or tucked behind it, or hidden in the drawer of a worktable, there may be something livelier. A novel, not necessarily forbidden, not always scandalous, but still watched with a certain suspicion. Novels can make a woman imagine alternatives. They can carry her into landscapes where people speak too honestly. Marry for love, run away, solve mysteries, inherit money, cross borders, lose reputations, regain them, and experience emotions large enough to disturb the parlor. A sermon improves you. A novel might recognize you. So when the hour becomes available, you take it carefully. You choose a seat near the window or slightly away from the main flow of household traffic. The book opens in your lap. The room remains ordinary. The ticking clock, the coal fire, the softened light, the smell of fabric and tea. But the page creates a second weather. Suddenly, there are moors or London fog, or Italian sunlight, or a country house with secrets in the locked rooms. The world widens without asking permission from your bonnet. You read with the alertness of someone both resting and committing a small act of independence. Your face must not give too much away, A smile can be dangerous. A gasp is worse. A blush may invite investigation. The true art is to appear gently occupied while inwardly crossing half of Europe, solving a murder, rejecting a dull suitor, and wondering whether the heroine should have packed warmer gloves. If someone enters, you are ready. The book tilts. A more respectable title appears. Your expression becomes mild. Yes, you say. It is very improving. Yes, the passage on duty is particularly fine. No, you have not reached the sentimental chapter. You lie with the calm of a woman trained by drawing rooms. Of course, not all reading is secret. Families read aloud. Women read to children, to elders, to themselves, to each other. Magazines circulate. Newspapers are discussed through filters of propriety. Advice manuals teach everything from table manners to moral hygiene. Household guides offer recipes, remedies, cleaning methods, and the kind of confident instruction that makes life look simpler on paper than in kitchens. But private reading is different. Private reading creates a room inside the mind. In that room, you are not only daughter, wife, sister, hostess, manager, or ornament. You are witness, you are judge, you are traveler, you are someone with an inner life. That does not need to be embroidered onto a cushion before it counts. The book does not ask whether your hem is correct, it asks what happens next. This question is one of the strongest forces in human life. What happens next? That is why stories endure, and why people who fear change often fear novels. A story can teach you to wait for a door to open. It can make the present feel temporary. It can whisper that even tightly arranged lives contain hidden passages. The household continues around you. A servant crosses the hall. Someone laughs in another room. The fire shifts. Your fingers hold the page at the corner. You read one more paragraph, then another, promising yourself you will stop at the end of the chapter. Though chapters are famous for ending at the precise moment one cannot possibly stop. The novel has its own rhythm, but tonight, for the sake of sleep, we let it move softly. No chase, no storm, no sudden revelation, only a woman reading by muted daylight, losing herself in sentences while the house breathes around her. At last, footsteps approach. The book closes, gently, not in defeat. Only in postponement. That is another pleasure of reading. The world inside the pages waits. It can be left and returned to. It does not punish lateness with calling cards. You mark your place and set the volume aside. The afternoon is not over. The household has questions. The kitchen has uncertainties. A dinner must be planned. A servant guided. A budget respected. A stain explained. The private room inside the mind must close for now. But it does not disappear. Somewhere behind your composed face, the heroine is still walking across the moor. And somewhere downstairs, the soup is becoming a problem. Managing a Victorian household is often described in soft words. Domestic duty, household care, feminine influence, the angel in the house, these phrases float lightly, as if rooms dust themselves out of affection and dinner appears because morality has been properly arranged. The reality is less poetic and more complicated. A household is an organism with many appetites. It consumes coal, candles, soap, starch, meat, bread, patience, wages, attention, and time. It produces laundry, dust, meals, complaints, accounts, social impressions, and the occasional smell no one wishes to identify. Even a comfortable home requires constant direction, especially a comfortable home. Comfort is not the absence of labor. It is labor made invisible. You step into this role after the gentler occupations of the morning, and the atmosphere changes. Here the stakes are not romantic, but practical. If the linens are not aired, someone notices. If the silver is dull, someone notices. If the cook is offended, everyone notices, usually through the soup. The housekeeper, if your household employs one, brings reports with the solemnity of a minister presenting state papers. The laundry is delayed because the weather has turned damp. The kitchen maid broke a dish and is either terrified or defiant. The butcher's bill is higher than expected. The drawing room fire smokes when the wind comes from the east. A guest may be expected Thursday, or perhaps Friday, depending on the handwriting of a letter that appears to have been composed during a carriage accident. You listen, you ask questions, you give instructions in a tone that must be firm without sounding unfeminine, kind without sounding weak, clear without sounding as though you have had to think about it too hard. This is one of the traps of authority given indirectly. You are responsible, but not always openly powerful. You may manage the servants, but your husband or father may control the money. You may oversee the meals, but the cook controls the stove. You may be judged for every failure, yet praised only when the whole machine runs so smoothly that no one remembers it is a machine. You walk through the rooms. The parlor must be ready for visitors, cushions adjusted, surfaces dusted, flowers refreshed or removed before they look tired. The hall should give an impression of order from the moment the door opens. Bedrooms must be aired, curtains drawn or opened according to light, weather, and the desired mood of the household. Carpets beaten, grates cleaned, fires laid, lamps trimmed downstairs. The kitchen is a warmer, louder world. It smells of onion, flour, iron, soap, meat, and effort. The cook has opinions, as all skilled people do. She knows what can be done with the materials available, and what cannot, no matter what a fashionable menu suggests. You discuss luncheon, dinner, possible guests, leftovers, preserves, and whether the fish delivered this morning can be trusted. Menu planning is a gentle art until it becomes warfare. Meals must reflect status without ruining the accounts. They must please family without boring guests. They must use seasonal ingredients. Manage servants' labor, accommodate digestion, avoid repetition, and appear natural. A dinner table is a form of social speech, and everyone knows it. Too plain and the household seems diminished, too lavish and it seems vulgar or wasteful, the correct dinner says. With great calm, that everything is exactly as it should be. The accounts wait next. Ledgers, receipts, bills, little columns of numbers that reveal the price of living respectably. Coal, candles, tea, sugar, soap, wages, repairs, ribbon, medicine, postage, a cracked window, a replacement brush. A small economy here, a necessary expense there. The domestic ideal may be wrapped in lace, but it is held together by arithmetic. There are human matters too, a maid whose mother is ill, a footman who has grown careless, a cook who may leave if criticized too sharply, a new girl who cries over broken china. The servants are not furniture, though society sometimes pretends otherwise. They have bodies, tempers, loyalties, ambitions, resentments, and exhaustion of their own. A wise mistress understands this. A foolish one discovers it in burned sauce and missing spoons. You make decisions. You soften one instruction, sharpen another, approve a purchase, deny a request, postpone a repair, and agree that the blue room must be aired before guests arrive. You do not sit at a desk with a title on the door, but you are running something all the same. By the time you return upstairs, the quieter rooms seem almost theatrical. So much effort below, such serenity above. The distinction is part of the performance. Guests will enter the drawing room and admire the calm, never seeing the scuttle, the steam, the hurried footsteps, the hands reddened by water, the cook's raised eyebrow, or your own careful calculations. You pause near the staircase and let your fingers rest on the banister. The wood is smooth from years of hands. Women before you have stood here too, listening to houses, managing expectations, turning limited authority into daily order. Their names may not appear in public records. Their work may be summarized in a line, kept house. But inside those two words are whole systems of labor, memory, judgment, and endurance. The house is not quiet because nothing is happening. It is quiet because everyone is working very hard to make it seem so. And now, having steadied the home, you must prepare again for the outer world, where the smallest conversation can require as much management as an entire kitchen. Victorian conversation is often mistaken for politeness. It is really a kind of navigation. The drawing room receives you with patterned carpet, upholstered chairs, framed landscapes, a piano waiting like a witness, and the soft filtered light of afternoon. This is a room designed for ease, yet it rarely permits complete relaxation. People gather here to rest in public, which is to say, not quite rest at all. A visitor may arrive, a relative may settle into a chair, a neighbor may appear with a face full of news she has not yet decided whether to share. Tea may be brought, and with tea comes the delicate theater of cups, saucers, sugar, milk, spoons, and the question of who is allowed to pour. Every action is small, every action can be seen. You sit upright, the corset assists, whether you want assistance or not. Your hands find work, perhaps sewing, perhaps holding a cup, perhaps smoothing a fold in your skirt. Idle hands make people nervous. Occupied hands allow thoughts to hide. The first subject is the weather, because the weather is a social blessing. It belongs to everyone and reveals almost nothing. One may say it has been damp, or bright, or uncertain, or most trying for the roads. Everyone can agree or gently modify. No one's reputation needs suffer. Then come gardens. Flowers are nearly as useful as weather, though slightly more dangerous. To praise one person's roses too warmly in front of another person, known for roses, may create a small frost. Still, gardens provide color, season, illness, servants, travel, and taste, all without requiring anyone to confess anything important. Health may be mentioned, but not described. A headache is acceptable, if distant. A nervous complaint may hover in the room, like a covered dish. Childbirth, digestion, and anything involving visible anatomy must remain behind the curtain of euphemism. Victorian speech is full of doors that open only a crack, and gossip, of course, moves beneath everything. It rarely announces itself as gossip. It arrives dressed as concern. Have you heard whether Miss Leland is quite well? Was it not unfortunate that Mr. Ames had to leave so suddenly? I do hope Mrs. Barrow is not overexerting herself with so many callers. These sentences wear gloves, but they can still draw blood. You learn to answer in ways that do not feed the fire. How kind of you to ask. I believe she is improving. One hopes the change of air will be beneficial. Such replies are soft blankets thrown over sparks. Sometimes they work, sometimes the sparks crawl out anyway. The art is to say enough to appear engaged and little enough to remain safe. Too much silence, and you seem cold. Too much enthusiasm, and you seem indiscreet. Wit is admired until it becomes sharp. Intelligence is welcome until it becomes inconvenient. Sincerity is touching until it becomes uncomfortable. So you learn the middle path, a narrow lane lined with teacups. Yet conversation also offers pleasure. A clever friend can make the room brighter with one carefully placed remark. An older woman with kind eyes can share wisdom disguised as a comment about curtains. Peasant can exchange a glance with you so full of mutual understanding that no words are needed. Within the cage of manners, people still find openings. The afternoon lengthens. Tea cools, a biscuit breaks softly. Someone mentions a concert. Someone else recalls a ball. A name is introduced and then withdrawn with exquisite care. The room lives on implication for the listener drifting towards sleep. This is a good place to rest for a moment. Nothing urgent is happening. The stakes are made of tone and timing, not thunder. The cups are warm, the chairs are deep, the voices rise and fall in a pattern almost like rain. You do not need to follow every name. You do not need to remember who called whom or why the blue bonnet mattered. Let the conversation become texture. The murmur of voices, the spoon against china, the faint crackle from the fire, the soft phrase repeated because no one knows what else to say. How very pleasant indeed. Quite so. Outside, the daylight begins to thin. Inside, the drawing room becomes golden at the edges. For a brief time, even etiquette grows drowsy. The visitor's voice slows. Your own answers become gentler. The house seems to inhale and hold. Then someone suggests a walk. A walk, in this world, is not simply a walk. It is exercise, display, health advice, social opportunity, moral demonstration, and weather report, all at once. You prepare as though leaving the house requires a minor expedition. Gloves again, bonnet secured, shawl or mantle chosen according to the sky, boots checked for mud from an earlier outing, a parasol or umbrella depending on the clouds, which have formed a committee and reached no conclusion. You do not usually go alone, especially if you are young and unmarried. A chaperone, sister, aunt, or suitable companion joins you, partly for propriety, partly for conversation, partly because society has a deep suspicion of women moving freely through space without explanation. The front door opens, and the outside air meets you with a cool little shock. The street is alive, but not restless in the modern way. Movement has weight here. Horses pull carriages, wheels grind over stone, a shop bell rings. A boy calls out some service or product in a voice already trained by necessity. Smoke threads upward from chimneys, softening the distance. Windows shine briefly as clouds move across the sun. You walk at a measured pace, not too fast. Speed suggests urgency, and urgency suggests something has gone wrong. The ideal is a gliding steadiness, the kind that allows the skirt to move gracefully and the breath to remain under control. Health must be pursued without looking sweaty enough to need it. The promenade, if you are in a town, is a moving drawing room. People see and are seen. Greetings are exchanged, hats tilt, eyes measure. Two women pause near a gate and pretend not to inspect your hem. A gentleman passes and becomes very interested in the opposite pavement. Children stare with the frankness adults have been trained to disguise. If you are in the country, the walk has more room to breathe. Hedges, lanes, damp fields, bare branches in winter, or heavy green in summer. The sound of rooks, the smell of wet earth, a style that requires negotiation with skirts. Here, respectability loosens slightly, though never enough to fall off entirely. You may breathe deeper. You may look farther. You may let the conversation become less polished. There is real relief in movement. After hours indoors, even cautious walking reminds the body it was not made only for chairs. The corset still sets boundaries. The boots still shape the step. The chaperone still keeps the world in place. But air enters. Color returns to the cheeks. The mind clears, not dramatically, but enough. You pass a garden wall where ivy gathers. A cat slips through a gap and disappears with enviable independence. A delivery cart rattles by. Somewhere, a church bell marks the hour, and the sound spreads through the afternoon like circles in water. Exercise in Victorian life is full of contradiction. Women are encouraged to be healthy, but not vigorous. Graceful, but not athletic. Active, but not independent, in a way that unsettles anyone. Croquet may be acceptable. A gentle ride may be admired. A brisk stride may be commented upon. Later, bicycles will disturb people wonderfully. For now, the walk remains the safest compromise. You return home before the weather turns. This is important, because Victorian weather enjoys timing its displeasure around clean hems. Inside, the house feels warmer than before. The hall smells of polish and fire. A servant takes your outer things. Your cheeks are faintly flushed, which can be called healthy as long as no one suggests you overdid it. You claim, truthfully enough, that the air was refreshing. And it was, not because you traveled far, not because anything grand occurred, but because for a little while, the day expanded beyond wallpaper and expectation. You saw the sky. You heard the street. Your body remembered the rhythm of steps. Now the afternoon closes around you again, but more softly. A walk has loosened one thread in the fabric of duty. It has not freed you from the pattern, but it has let air pass through. Soon, another respectable accomplishment awaits, one that will fill the house with sound. Test your patience, and remind everyone that a young lady's education is meant to be heard, but not too passionately. The piano is waiting in the parlor. It stands with polished seriousness, its dark surface reflecting a narrow strip of window light. To modern eyes, it may look inviting, almost romantic. To you, it looks like an obligation with keys. Music is one of the accepted accomplishments, and accomplishments are the decorative armor of respectable women. A girl may be taught to sing, play piano, perhaps manage a little harp, paint watercolors, speak some French dance, sew, and write letters with grace. Whether she loves any of these things is a separate matter. Love is optional. Performance is not. You sit at the piano bench and arrange your skirt. This takes a moment. Victorian clothing is never simply sat in. It is negotiated with. Your back is straight, your hands lift. The first notes are scales, because even music must begin with discipline. The sound travels through the house. Someone in the next room hears you. Someone upstairs hears you. A servant in the hall hears you while pretending not to. The piano makes privacy impossible. Every hesitation becomes public. Every wrong note leaves the body and goes wandering through the household, where it may be discovered by an aunt. You play carefully at first. The piece is not too difficult, at least in theory. It has a melody suitable for afternoon, neither mournful enough to alarm, nor lively enough to suggest theatrical tendencies. Your fingers find the pattern, lose it, recover, and continue. The piano is slightly out of tune because damp weather has opinions about wood and wire. You decide silently that any questionable chord belongs to the instrument. If a music teacher is present, the ordeal sharpens. Teachers possess a special ability to sigh without sound. They tap the page, correct the wrist, adjust the tempo, and remind you that expression is welcome within the limits of taste. Too little feeling and the music is dull. Too much, and one begins to wonder what novels you have been reading. Singing may follow. This requires courage of a different kind. The voice cannot hide behind ivory keys. It must leave the body directly. You stand or sit, depending on the song, and produce a tone meant to be clear, modest, and pleasing. Not powerful. Power is risky. The ideal voice floats, charms, obeys the room, and never sounds as though it might lead a revolution. And yet music, like needlework, contains secret doors. There are moments when the melody does carry you. A phrase resolves gently. A chord opens into warmth. The room around you seems to soften, and the obligation becomes, briefly, something close to pleasure. The piano answers your hands. Your breathing finds the rhythm. Even the watching relatives fade into the edges. Music gives emotion permission to appear in disguise. A song may ache where a woman cannot. A nocturne may linger where conversation must move on. A hymn may hold grief without naming it. A drawing room ballad may let longing sit politely on the chair beside you. Perhaps that is why people insist on music, even when the performances are uneven. It fills the house with feeling in a form everyone can approve. You finish the piece. There is polite praise. Very nicely played. Such improvement. A delicate touch. These phrases are pleasant and slightly exhausting. You smile, thank them, and accept the suggestion that you practice the troublesome passage again tomorrow. The piano lid remains open. Sheet music lies across the stand, marked with fingerings, corrections, and the ghosts of earlier mistakes. You touch the edge of the page before closing it. The room becomes quiet in the particular way rooms are quiet after music, as if the air remembers what just happened. For the listener now, perhaps already resting deeper, let the piano become distant. Not a concert, not a challenge, only a few soft notes drifting from a room with long curtains, fading slowly into the afternoon. The day has been full of visible tasks. Now comes one of its inkier duties, correspondence. Letters are the long breath of Victorian society. They carry affection, obligation, news, apology, invitation, refusal, gossip, gratitude, mourning, congratulations, and carefully measured insult across miles of road and rail. A letter can bind families together. It can repair a slight. It can create one. It can be saved in a drawer for decades or read aloud at breakfast before the sender has properly considered the consequences. You sit at a small writing desk where the surface bears the fine scratches of previous thoughts. Paper is selected, not any paper. The sheet must suit the purpose. A letter of thanks, a family update, a condolence, a reply to a dinner invitation, a note to a friend. Each has its own tone, length, and degree of emotional exposure. Ink waits in its well. The pen is dipped, lifted, and held above the page for that little hesitation before language becomes permanent. The opening must be warm, but not excessive. My dear Clara, or perhaps my dearest cousin, or dear Mrs. Ashford, if the relationship requires a little fence. The first lines inquire after health, because health is the approved doorway through which feeling may enter. You hope the recipient is well. You mention your own household. You refer to weather, travel, mutual acquaintances, a visit recently paid, parcel received, a kindness remembered. The sentence winds gracefully, because brevity can seem abrupt, and abruptness can seem cold. In this world, writing is both communication and performance. Your handwriting matters, your spelling matters, your crossings out matter. A blot of ink can look like agitation. A crooked line can suggest haste. The page should show care without strain. It should seem as though your thoughts naturally arrange themselves in balanced phrases while your wrist slowly begins to ache. You write of ordinary things. The garden is recovering after rain. Your mother's cough is improved. The new maid is willing, though not yet graceful with trays. The concert last week was pleasant. Mrs. Vale wore a remarkable shade of green. You do not say it was unflattering. You simply say remarkable, and trust the language to do its work. A friend may receive more of the truth, not all of it. The whole truth is rarely placed in ink, unless the writer is young, desperate, or destined for biography. But a little truth may slip through. You confess to fatigue. You admit that the season feels long. You joke about the number of calls owed. You mention a book in a way that lets your friend know which book, though no censorious aunt would notice. Letters create intimacy across distance, but also delay. This is important. You cannot send a feeling and receive an answer in the same breath. You must fold the feeling, seal it, release it, and wait. Waiting gives emotion time to cool, deepen, distort, or become poetry. It also gives worry plenty of room to furnish itself. The letter lengthens. Page 1 becomes page 2. Your hand grows tired. The room grows quieter. Outside the window, afternoon leans toward evening. You hear the clock, the faint motion of the house, perhaps the clink of preparation somewhere below as dinner begins to enter the minds of servants. You close with care, with fond affection. Ever yours I remain. With warmest regards. Each closing chooses the distance between two people. Too formal, and affection retreats. Too intimate, and meaning may gallop away, uncontrolled. The ink must dry. The paper is folded. The envelope addressed. Perhaps wax is used, perhaps not, depending on the household, the habit, and the weight of the message. Once sealed, the letter becomes an object in the world. It leaves your control. This is both frightening and restful. You have placed part of the day into words. You have turned calls, weather, illness, music, and mild irritation into a narrative someone else can hold. In doing so, you have made the day seem more orderly than it felt. That is one of writing's old comforts. It gathers scattered hours and lays them flat. The letter is placed aside for posting. There may be more to write, but one is enough for now. The hand deserves rest. The mind too. You flex your fingers and look toward the window where the light has become gentle, almost amber. The house is changing its mood. Daytime duties are not finished, but they are beginning to dress themselves for evening. And evening, in a Victorian household, arrives with fresh clothing, brighter lamps, heavier food, and a new set of rules pretending to be pleasure. Before dinner, the house shifts into a more polished key. Daylight withdraws from the windows, and lamps begin to take over its work. Servants move through halls with a different urgency. Fires are strengthened. Curtains are drawn against the dark. The smell of cooking rises with greater confidence from below stairs. Somewhere a wardrobe opens again, because the dress that carried you through morning, calls, and afternoon duties will not necessarily satisfy the evening. The change of dress is not always grand, but it is meaningful. Evening asks for a different surface, a better fabric perhaps, a richer color, a neckline adjusted according to age, marital status, occasion, and the household's tolerance for collarbones. Jewelry may appear modest or impressive depending on means. Hair may be touched again, gloves considered, a ribbon replaced. The body that has already been arranged once must be rearranged for the next act. You stand again while hooks are fastened and fabric settled. The room is warmer now than it was in the morning. Candlelight flatters what daylight inspected. The mirror gives back a softer version of you, one made of silk sheen, shadow, and the slight fatigue around the eyes that powder cannot entirely persuade. Dinner may be family only, or it may include guests. In either case, it is never merely food, it is order made edible. You enter the dining room at the proper time. The table gleams with more objects than anyone strictly needs. Forks, knives, spoons, glasses, plates, napkins, salts, napkins, candles, serving dishes, flowers or foliage, and perhaps a centerpiece that quietly blocks half the conversation. The room has been prepared to suggest abundance controlled by taste. Too little, and one seems poor. Too much, and one seems desperate to disprove it. You take your place. There's always a place. Even the arrangement of bodies around the table speaks a language of rank. Courtesy, age, marriage, and strategic separation of people who should not be allowed to argue before soup. The meal begins. Soup first, perhaps. It must be taken from the side of the spoon with composure. No sound, no haste, no visible fear if it is hot enough to change the future of your mouth. Fish may follow, with its own implement. Meat arrives. Vegetables appear in states ranging from delicate to defeated. Sauces shine. Puddings wait. Something set in jelly may tremble beneath the candlelight with more confidence than you feel. You eat enough to seem appreciative, not enough to appear greedy. You praise what can be praised. If something is strange, you call it interesting. If something is unpleasant, you take a smaller portion and develop a sudden interest in conversation. Dinner conversation has more movement than afternoon tea. The room is warmer, the candles kinder, the company perhaps more varied. Men may discuss politics, business, empire, reforms, railways, or newspapers, depending on the company, and the hostess's ability to redirect before the table becomes a parliamentary battlefield. Women may speak of music, literature, families, charity, travel, and the acceptable edges of public life. The rules remain. Do not dominate, do not disappear, do not correct too sharply, do not reveal hunger, boredom, brilliance, resentment, or the exact opinion you formed when Mr. Langley began explaining Italy to a woman who has been there. You laugh softly when required. You ask a question that allows someone else to feel interesting. You avoid the dangerous dish with careful timing. You notice whether the guest beside you is shy, pompous, kind, or likely to repeat things. You make the evening smoother by spending your own attention like invisible currency. This is another form of labor, Hospitality often looks like grace from the outside. Inside, it is constant adjustment. Is the conversation balanced? Is the shy guest included? Has the elderly aunt been given enough warmth? Is the young man talking too long? Has the roast satisfied? Did the cook succeed? Are the servants moving well? Has anyone noticed the crack in the blue dish? You appear serene, because serenity is part of the meal. Course follows course. The body becomes full, the mind slightly blurred, candle flames double in the glasses. The room smells of wax, food, flowers, and warmed fabric. Outside, the dark presses softly at the windows. The day that began in cold gray light is now enclosed in gold. After dinner, depending on custom and company, the women may withdraw to the drawing room, while the men remain for conversation. This separation has its own strange quiet. The women settle into chairs with the relief of people released from knives and direct political commentary. Tea or coffee may appear, fans open and close. Someone comments on the meal, someone else comments on the comment. There is comfort in the after-dinner room. Everyone is a little tired. The sharpest social edges are dulled by food and lamplight. A young woman may play a short piece at the piano. An older woman may doze for 3 minutes and deny it. A guest may admire the embroidery left on a table. The room becomes a pool of low voices. If you are listening now in bed, this is another safe place to let the story blur. The dinner table, the candles, the softened voices, the slow movement of servants clearing plates far away. Nothing needs to be solved. No question needs answering. The evening simply continues, as evenings do, gathering itself toward night. Later, when guests leave or the family disperses, the house exhales. Doors close, carriage wheels fade, the dining room is cleared. The fires are checked. The formal face of the home begins to relax. You have reached the late evening, but not yet sleep. There remains one small private ritual, perhaps the most important of the day, because it belongs less to society and more to the self that has been waiting quietly beneath it. The journal is kept in a drawer, sometimes locked, sometimes only hidden beneath papers no one else finds interesting. It is not always a dramatic object. It may be plain, with a worn cover and pages that remember the pressure of your hand. It may contain practical notes, copied verses, private prayers, accounts of visits, fragments of feeling, judgment softened for safety, and the occasional line so honest you would deny authorship if questioned. At night, when the household is quieter and the day's demands have loosened, the journal can be opened. You sit near a candle. The flame moves when you breathe. Your evening dress has perhaps been changed for something easier, or perhaps you are still partly arranged, too tired to begin the final dismantling. The pen waits. The page is blank in a way that feels both inviting and dangerous. What does a Victorian woman write when she is finally briefly alone? Perhaps she writes that the day was fine. This is often how truth enters quietly. The day was fine. The morning was cold. We called on Mrs. Ashford. Clara has written, dinner passed off well. The new housemaid broke a plate. I practiced for half an hour. Mother seemed tired. The weather threatens rain. Under these facts, another life stirs. You write that you felt restless during embroidery. You write that a passage in a novel has stayed with you. You write that Mrs. Vale looked unhappy, though she laughed all afternoon. You write that the house feels too full of voices, and yet you sometimes fear silence. You write that you wish to travel. You write that you are grateful. You write that you are ashamed of being ungrateful. You write that tomorrow you will be better, kinder, less impatient, more industrious, or at least more successful at appearing so. The journal is where contradictions can sit together without immediately being introduced to the room. All day, you have translated yourself into manners, into clothing, into answers, into smiles, into thank you notes, into music, into household instructions softened by tone. Now, for a few minutes, translation is less necessary. The pen moves more freely. You might record a dream, a fear, a joke that would be too sharp aloud, a secret admiration, a private irritation with someone everyone else praises. You may write about God, books, money, time, love, boredom, duty, or the strange fact that a life can be comfortable and constricting at once. The candle lowers, wax gathers at the side. Your handwriting changes as tiredness enters the hand. Lines that began neat and upright begin to lean. The mind, too, begins to drift. The day's hard edges soften in memory. Morning cold becomes almost picturesque. Breakfast becomes a scene. The difficult call becomes a sentence. Dinner becomes candlelight. The whole day, once lived, becomes something that can be folded into a few pages and closed. This is a kind of power. Small but real, public history may not ask what you thought while brushing your hair or answering a call. It may not record how often you swallowed an honest reply, how carefully you watched a room, how much work was hidden beneath the word graceful. But the journal asks, or rather it waits, and in waiting gives permission. You finish the entry with a final line, perhaps a hope for tomorrow, perhaps a prayer, perhaps only the date. The pen is wiped, the ink dries, the book closes. You place it back in the drawer and slide the drawer shut. The sound is small, but it feels like the ceiling of a private chamber. For the rest of the household, the day is nearly done. For you, a part of the day has at last become yours. And now comes the final undoing. The house at bedtime has a different soul from the house at morning. In the morning, it is all preparation, coal, water, clothing, schedules, voices, gathering strength. At night, it is release. The lamps are lower. The servants move more slowly, though their work is not done. The fires settle. The staircase darkens at the edges. Rooms that spent the day receiving people now sit with their furniture quietly facing one another. Relieved of conversation, you return to the bedroom. The bed waits as it did in the morning. But now it seems less like a place you are being forced to leave and more like a harbor. The curtains hang heavy. The sheets have been turned down. A hot water bottle may have been placed inside, warming a small oval of future comfort. The fire, if maintained, glows low. If not, the room is cold again, but night cold feels different from morning cold. Morning cold demands action. Night cold invites surrender. Undressing reverses the day's architecture. Pins are removed from the hair first. One by one, it is surprising how many the head can carry. Each pin set down is a small argument concluded. The hairstyle loosens. Coils fall. Braids unwind. The face in the mirror changes. Less public, less arranged, more tired, more human. The dress is unfastened. Hooks release. Buttons yield. Fabric slides away with a soft weight. Petticoats follow, one layer after another, the day's volume collapsing into cloth. The corset is loosened at last. This moment is difficult to describe without making it too dramatic, but it matters. The breath deepens. The ribs remember space. The body, held all day in a certain grammar, returns slowly to its own language. You inhale not a grand breath, not a symbolic breath, just a breath that goes farther than the last one did. The nightdress is simple and pale. After the structured day, it feels almost like forgiveness. Your hair is brushed in long strokes, slower now, not to prepare for being seen, but to settle the scalp, the mind, the last wakeful sparks of thought. The brush makes a soft sound. Again and again, if sleep has a preface, it might sound like hair being brushed in a dim Victorian room. There is washing too, though gently. The face is cleared of powder. Hands are rinsed. The day's dust, scent, and effort are reduced, if not entirely removed. A towel presses the skin. The mirror catches the candle flame and gives back a blurred version of you, as if already dreaming. Perhaps you kneel to pray. Many women do. The words may be familiar from childhood, worn smooth by repetition. Gratitude, protection, forgiveness, guidance. Beneath the formal prayer, private requests gather. Patience for tomorrow, health for someone loved, courage for a conversation, relief from a worry too small to name and too persistent to ignore. Then the bed. You lift the covers and slide between sheets that are cold at the edges, warmer near the bottle. The first touch makes you tense, then soften. The blankets are drawn up. The room narrows to pillow, breath, candle, curtain, and the fading shape of furniture. But sleep, even after such a long day, does not always arrive at once. The Victorian mind has its own late-night habits. It reviews, it replays, it adjusts. Did you answer that question too quickly? Did you leave the call at the proper moment? Was the letter too warm? Did the cook understand about Thursday? Did someone notice the repaired lace? Did the heroine in your novel make the right choice? Did you? Thoughts move like small carriages through the dark. One by one you let them pass. Here is the morning room, gray and cold. Let it pass. Here is the corset tightening and the mirror waiting. Let it pass. Here is breakfast with tea and toast and careful voices. Let it pass. Here are calling cards on a tray. Let them pass. Here is the needle moving through cloth. Let it pass. Here is the page of the novel. The secret road beyond the parlor. Let it pass. Here is the kitchen, the ledger, the polished hall. Let it pass. Here is the drawing room, the murmur of visitors, the cup in your hand. Let it pass. Here is the walk beneath the pale sky. Let it pass. Here is the piano note fading into the room. Let it pass. Here is the letter folded. Let it pass. Here is the dinner candle reflected in glass. Let it pass. Here is the journal closing. Let it pass. The day loosens. Its obligations lose their edges. The rules that seemed so firm become only patterns in darkness. The house settles around you with creaks and sighs. Pole shifts in the grate. Wind touches the window pane. Somewhere far away, a carriage goes by, and then is gone. You are no longer required to be witty. No one is asking whether you slept well. No one is counting stitches, interpreting silence, waiting for the correct fork, or measuring the distance between your visits. For a few hours, the costume of the day hangs over a chair, emptied of meaning. The woman in the bed is not a symbol, not an angel, not an ornament, not only a daughter, wife, sister, hostess, manager, correspondent, performer, or keeper of keys. She is tired, and tiredness at last is allowed. Her breathing slows. The room grows larger and softer. The candle is put out, or burns low until someone pinches it dark. The canopy above becomes a shadow. The blankets become weight and warmth. The last thought is not complete, and does not need to be. Perhaps tomorrow will bring the same duties again, the same bell pull, the same cold floor, the same laces, tea cards, stitches, letters, glances, music, and careful words. But tomorrow is not here. It waits beyond the door, folded neatly like a dress over the back of a chair. For now, there's only this room, this bed, this slow breath, this quiet house in the long Victorian night, and somewhere, far behind the curtains of sleep, history keeps moving softly, room by room, while you rest.